Go ahead.
Has the administration made any effort, this is just a Putin-related
Sure.
question, has the administration made any effort to find out what was said during the previous president's 2-hour long one-on-one meeting with Putin in Helsinki?
It's a great question. Obviously, there's intelligence reports that may reflect that, but I'm not aware of any specific deep dive into that. I'm happy to check if there's more on it.
And I'm sorry, one more question. The Chinese government has indicated that it wants to meet with President Biden virtually in April before that climate summit. I'm wondering if the Biden administration is open to that, and if there have been any talks about setting that meeting up.
I know we'll have more on the climate summit, which is just over a month away now, so it's coming closer. And there are, of course, a range of international global participants that we anticipate being a part of it, but we're not at the stage where we're discussing bilateral meetings at this point in time. Go ahead, David. Oh, sorry, Jeff. I'll come back to you next. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. Go ahead, David.
Maybe Mr. Skuplik should go first.
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry to go back to the Russia
Sure.
question here, but the president now, by my count, has said that Russia would pay a price for solar winds.
Mm-hmm.
He has said that they would pay a price for Navalny, and as
Yeah.
you pointed out, there have already been some sanctions there.
Yeah.
Yesterday, he seemed to suggest that they would pay a price in addition for the meddling in the 2020 elections.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, your own colleagues seem to have sanctions fatigue out here.
Who are my colleagues? In the government? Or
your colleagues in the State Department, the West Wing. I mean, you
Oh.
announced sanctions on Russia back when you were State Department spokeswoman. Is there any evidence that the method that we're using so far of sanctions is actually affecting Putin's behavior?
I don't think we would rely, David, on sanctions alone. We do think that they have been effective modes. I mean, history, you've written many stories about it, about the role sanctions have played in moving global diplomacy forward, and we certainly are a believer in that. But as you also know, there are a range of tools at the disposal of any president, seen and unseen, and I'm just not going to get ahead of the process of what considerations are underway.
On China, obviously the meeting is yet to happen today. But at the end of this whole process, once Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Blinken come back, what does the president think is the next right step? Is it further meetings at this level? Is it more direct conversation like the one he had for several hours last month with President Xi? Is it a response to the Chinese related hack that he's also trying to go deal with?
I expect he'll make a determination about that when they return and he has a chance to talk to Secretary Blinken and National Security Advisor Sullivan, in part because he doesn't see this, nor do they, as a preset series of meetings like the traditional dialogues that we've seen throughout other administrations, including ones that he has previously served in. This meeting, we certainly anticipate will have difficult components of the conversation. We expect it to be frank. They plan to cover areas where we have concerns, including human rights, Hong Kong. Obviously, we've put forward some sanctions related to the anti-democratic actions in Hong Kong over the last couple of days. Technology, whether it relates to the theft of IP or data protections, military tensions in the region. So it will cover, as will be no surprise to anyone here who follows China closely, a range of topics. And I think the president's eager to hear from them on how the conversation goes and work with them to determine what the next right step is. I will say that in his mind and in the minds of National Security Advisor Sullivan and Secretary of State Blinken, a big part of the strategy is approaching our relationship with China from a place of strength and strengthening our own economy at home, investing in the middle class, looking at it through the prism of competition, not conflict. And that means there's also more work we have to do here.
From your answer, things like the economic and strategic dialogue, which took place in the Obama administration and continued some in the Trump administration, that's over for now.
I would simply say that this meeting is not a part of a series of meetings at this point in time. Go ahead.
Are we supposed to defer to?
Oh, sorry, Jeff. You're kind of getting hazed for your scooplet. Right, I know you can. Okay. He'll just sit on his scooplet. He doesn't care. Go ahead, Karen.
A couple questions on schools. Last month, the CDC released school guidance urging 6 feet of distance between students and staff. And now the CDC director says she's revisiting this. We're reporting that this could come as early as tomorrow, that will go from 6 feet to 3 feet. What does the White House say to teachers who are concerned that the science hasn't changed in 5 weeks and that this is political, this change?
I would say that the CDC is full of health and medical experts, including Dr. Walensky, who would be the last person to characterize herself as political. She is a medical health expert, and she has looked at this through the prism of how we can take steps to make it safe to reopen schools, and is constantly evaluating how to ease some of the restrictions. And there are, of course, more that often you've all have asked about in here, which are good questions. What about travel? What about masks? They take an approach that is purely through the science. So we'll let her speak more about it when they're ready to release those formal guidelines.
The White House directs states to do something with that guidance when it's released, similar to what we saw when the president made the direction on vaccine eligibility.
You mean like, will we direct schools to?
Now do this. The CDC has said this, 6 to 3 feet. You now have to follow this to push for reopening.
Well, social distancing is one of the mitigation measures, right, in the CDC guidance. And I don't know, I have not seen the CDC guidance, so I don't know how it will be characterized in there. But I would certainly say we'd have Secretary Cardona, who was just here yesterday, work with schools and school districts to implement. And social distancing is one of the steps, masking, testing, vaccinations, and see how it can help reopen schools more quickly.
And you want to see this, kind of overnight, go from 6 to 3 feet in the schools that are open right now and possibly increase the number of students that can be in the classroom before the end of the year?
I don't have a timeline for it. I don't anticipate we'd ask any school to do something immediately overnight, but it will just be additional guidance, which a lot of schools are looking for from health and medical experts on how to safely reopen schools and ensure that the parents in the community, the teachers in the community, the students feel safe going to school. And this just, as they're considering options, this is one of the options one of the mitigation steps a school can take. Go ahead.
2 quick questions to continue with the scooplet theme.
Okay.
There was a report just about an hour ago that the president intends to nominate Bill Nelson as NASA chief. Can you confirm that?
I have seen those reports. I don't have any personnel announcements to make today. Seems like a cool job, though, that I'm not currently on the path to, but it's fine.
You're not auditioning right now?
I am certainly not. I don't have any personnel announcements to make. Certainly seen the reports. As we have any updates, we'll provide them.
And the second question, the president said yesterday that he intends to try to raise taxes on anyone that was making over $400,000 a year. Does he think that's, does he intend to wait until the economy is out of the pandemic recession, or does he feel confident that that by making it only on higher earners that it will not affect the broader economy?
Well, the president is certainly focused on ensuring the economy is continuing to recover and that people are going back to work and able to put food on the table to feed their families. When we're talking about families making over $400,000 a year, that's about 2% of households in this country. And this is a commitment that he talked about on the campaign trail. And his interest is in ensuring that people pay their fair share, whether it's corporations or the highest income earners in our country. And he believes that hard work should be rewarded, and that this is one of the areas where there is an opportunity to rebalance how our policies are currently. But he would do this in coordination with, of course, members of Congress, members of his economic team, and we obviously don't have a proposed plan at this point, but it is a policy that he talked about on the campaign trail, and he reiterated, as you noted earlier this week. Did you have a second question too, or no?
Those are the 2. The scooplet question.
Okay, got it. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
All right, yay.
The man of the hour.
On AstraZeneca, you mentioned that the U.S. has 7 million doses, releasable doses, and the company itself has said it expects to have up to 30 million in April. Given that, will the U.S. consider sharing more of these doses with the other countries that are asking, now that you've confirmed that you're doing the same for Mexico and Canada?
We don't have anything to preview, but we all, have a number of requests from a range of countries around the world, and certainly will continue those conversations.
Okay, but no commitment at this point to share specifically the AstraZeneca vaccine with others?
Well, I will say, broadly speaking, we also anticipate having additional doses of Moderna, of Pfizer, of a range of vaccines, even as we focus on vaccinating, ensuring every American, every adult American has access to the vaccine. It's just a matter of timeline. So I just don't have an update or a preview on that, but certainly we'll have those conversations, and we are open to receiving those requests and obviously making considerations.
All right, and just on one other issue, your new U.S. trade representative will be ceremonially sworn in later
Yes.
today.
97-0,
That's
I think was her vote.
big number.
It's pretty solid.
How soon will she start leading trade talks with the UK?
I don't have anything to preview. Obviously, that's driven by the policies and the agenda of the president and the overall economic team. I'm sure we will be integrating her into all of the policy discussions as soon as she's sworn in. Let me just get to the folks in the back. Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. A couple quick questions. When you were talking a moment ago about diplomatic negotiations between the United States and Mexico, you said crisis on the border. Was that a
Challenges on the border.
Okay, but so that doesn't reflect any change in
Nope.
the administration's view of things.
Nope.
Okay. Well, another quick question then. On Monday, the president said it's important to get the vaccine, and then quote, even after that, until everyone is in fact vaccinated, to wear this mask, unquote. Was he speaking generally, or does he believe that we should all be wearing masks until everyone is in fact vaccinated?
Well, I think what he's reflecting is the guidance from our health experts that even if you're vaccinated, I am vaccinated, I still wear a mask because there hasn't been conclusive studies yet on the transferability of the pandemic or from COVID from those who have been vaccinated. It continues to be the advice of health and medical experts to continue to wear masks.
Right, but every American, is that the standard until every American has been vaccinated, or was he speaking generally?
I think he's speaking generally about the need to still observe measures like social distancing and wearing of masks so that even when you're vaccinated, you're keeping your neighbors, your friends, your family members safe.
And then back in January, you noted that the administration was reviewing how unmarried couples were handled under travel restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any developments on those restrictions? I know that there's a lot on the administration's plate.
Yeah.
But in how unmarried binational couples are treated?
I don't have any update for you. The review is ongoing.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Thank you. You're very generous. The Equality Act, as it's currently written, would eliminate the Religious Freedom Restoration Act as a defense for religious organizations against discrimination claims. Given that President Biden voted in favor of RFRA, does he support it being abolished now?
I would have to check on the specific components of the package. I'm happy to do that for you after the briefing. Go ahead in the back.
Thank you very much, Jen. Two East Asia question and one Asian American question,
Okay.
if I may. On U.S.-China talks, can we expect the joint statement after talks?
A joint statement between them. I don't have anything to preview. I know that National Security Advisor Sullivan and Secretary Blinken will be speaking briefly after the talks conclude, but I don't have anything to preview for you in terms of a joint statement.
Okay, another question is, according to Japanese media, Japanese Prime Minister Suga will meet President Biden on April 9th. Can you confirm that?
I know there have been reports about a future meeting, and the president's certainly looking forward to meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. I don't believe a final confirmation has been made here of what that meeting will look like and what the format would be.
Okay, and one Asian American question.
Okay.
On the unfortunate Atlanta shooting, we already see the half-staff outside. Yesterday, you blamed the prior administration about this, which some people agree. But as what Axios reports, quote, the United States rivalry with China had already created unease about Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, unquote. And Axios says we are going to see a huge jump in hate crimes against Asian Americans this year. So it seems to be that President Biden is in this catch-22. On the one hand, he is trying to alleviate the hate crimes against Asians and Asian Americans. On the other hand, he's kind of escalates the tension. How can he really alleviate this situation?
I would just refute the notion of that question. I would say that yesterday I was asked, which was a good question, if we thought that the former president's rhetoric had contributed to the actions or the discrimination against Asian Americans, and I said we do, because rhetoric, certainly from the massive megaphone you have from the White House, is something that is heard across the country, and it's important to then be thoughtful about the words you use and how you convey opposition to discrimination of any kind. That was the answer, the question I was answering. The president and the vice president are meeting with leaders of the Asian American community tomorrow. The president raised his concerns about rhetoric, about attacks, about threats against the Asian American community in the country during his primetime address. He signs an executive order. He's asked his members of administration to listen, hear, think about policy solutions. I would say his effort is to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I would just dispute your question. Go ahead in the back.
Thanks, Jen. A few questions for you. The president mentioned in his ABC interview his thoughts on potential changes to the filibuster. I wondered, does he support getting rid of the 60-vote threshold on the legislative filibuster?
I think what he said is that he'd be open to hearing ideas about going back to the talking filibuster, which Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is the best reference that anyone can make on that front. Obviously, that hasn't been the law in the Senate since before I was born, so many years. But that is a proposal that had been put forward by Senator Manchin, and his whole point is that, and as he said in his comments, our democracy looks at moments like it's broken, and it shouldn't be so easy to block legislation. At the same time, his preference and his priority is working with Democrats and Republicans to find a pathway forward on a range of issues where there has been a history of bipartisan support, whether it's infrastructure, immigration, addressing, making our economy and our workers more competitive against the competition with China. There are a lot of ways we can work together. That's his preference. And so he was just expressing an openness to hearing from members of the Senate on what their ideas are. Ultimately, though, as president, he doesn't vote here. It's not a law. He signs into law. It's a Senate rule. So you'll have to talk to them about what their ideas are and what they have the votes for to move forward.
So he would defer to senators on whether they would support scrapping.
It's not about deferring. He's not in the Senate. He doesn't decide what the Senate rules are. They do.
Influence if he were to voice an opinion.
He's going to have the senators decide what rules they want to abide by moving forward.
Just a couple other quick ones. I wondered, there are a few key agencies that have yet to have Senate nominated or confirmed leaders that are certainly in the news now. CBP, ICE, the FDA during the pandemic. I wonder, does the administration have any plans or timetable for when it might put forward nominees to lead those agencies?
All important agencies. I don't have any update on the personnel process, but we're working our way through and ensuring we have the right people we can nominate for each of those important roles.
Okay. And then lastly, I wonder, this week there's a group of college basketball players ahead of the NCAA tournament who started a protest on social media with the hashtag #NotNCAAProperty. And they're looking for more financial freedom and personal protections from the NCAA. I wondered, one of the things they're asking for is a meeting with federal officials and potentially the Biden administration to talk about legislation on this. So does the president support college athletes being able to profit off their name and likeness? And would the administration be willing to meet with these players if they ask for a meeting?
I'm happy to see if there's any plans for a meeting and if we've received the request. Go ahead in the back.
Thank you, Jen. Questions on U.S.-China meeting. China has a poor record of keeping promises. So how would you characterize the level of trust that the current administration has with regard to China? And also for the bilateral meeting between President Biden and President Xi, what are the conditions that has to be happen? What are the conditions for the meeting to happen? Thank you.
I don't think I'm here to set conditions today. We haven't even announced the specific details about the climate summit that's happening in April, which I think was what the bilateral question was around. And we certainly haven't made a final decision about any bilateral meetings around that meeting. As we do, I'm sure we can discuss it further. And then as it relates to the meeting today, I think or that starts today, I should say, it was important to our administration that the first meeting with Chinese officials be held on American soil and occur after we have met and consulted closely with partners and allies in both Asia and Europe. This is an opportunity to address a wide variety of issues, including ones where we have deep disagreements. And so our focus is on having a frank discussion, raising issues where we have concerns, and of course, looking for ways and places where we can work together. Go ahead.
Thanks. While you've been briefing, President Putin has just extended an invitation to President Biden to continue their conversation, but this time he wants to do it live. He's asking for a live-streamed conversation, an open, direct dialogue. Putin says he's available tomorrow or Monday. Is this something that you would consider?
I'll have to get back to you if that is something we are entertaining. I would say that the president already had a conversation already with President Putin, even if as there are more world leaders that he has not yet engaged with. And we engage with Russian leaders, members of the government at all levels, but I don't have anything to report to you in terms of a future meeting. The president will, of course, be in Georgia tomorrow and quite busy. Go ahead.
One very quick final question. On the wall, on day one in office, I think it was, the president signed a proclamation that was effectively putting a pause or halting wall construction. At the time, I think he directed federal agencies to formulate a plan within 60 days, depending who's counting. We're on 58, 59, or
We have
almost.
2 more days.
Do we have? Okay, some said 59. I thought it was 1, but we'll go with 2 more days. To redirect border wall funds and, quote, resume, modify, or terminate segments of the structure that remain under construction. Have those federal agencies provided you with their conclusions? Have you come to a conclusion? What is the status of that with that remaining 1 or 2 days left?
I will check and see if there's an update. We are, of course, there is funding that was appropriated previously that is still moving forward. Money that has not been appropriated, as you noted, we've kind of pulled back on, but I will check and see. We have 2 more days, which is a lifetime in this place, and see if we have an update for you on the status.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's okay. Oh, it's your first day. I'm sorry. Welcome.
So a lot of my colleagues in this room and outside this room have been asking for a while now about the possibility of visiting these facilities where unaccompanied children are being held after arriving and applying for asylum at the border. And part of the pushback that we've received from you and from DHS and HHS is that there are privacy concerns about reporters potentially,
And COVID.
and privacy concerns in COVID, but specifically to privacy. Reporters have been allowed inside these facilities for years through multiple administrations by multiple agencies, including by the last administration during the family separation crisis, where I think the risk of further emotional damage to these kids is pretty acute. So, has there been, to your knowledge, any incident in which a kid's privacy was violated by reporters who were there to cover the facilities in which they were being detained?
Oh, during the last administration?
During the long history of reporters being
I would say, as I noted in response to a question or 2 questions that were asked earlier that were very similar, our big concern has been the pandemic and COVID and safety. Of course, there are privacy concerns that anyone takes into account, or I would say any administration should take into account as it relates to members of the media visiting a facility where there are children, as I'm sure you would certainly agree on. I can't speak to what the approach was of the prior administration who was ripping children from the arms of their parents, so I can't speak to what their policies were, but we are working, and we're very committed here from the White House and from the government in finding a way soon, very soon, to ensure that there's access by the media, not by us providing you with what we see, but by the media to these shelter facilities. We believe it's important and vital, and we're committed to it. And we're just working through the pandemic. This is about the safety of staff, the safety of kids as well, and that's what we're working through at this point in time. So hopefully I'll have an update soon. Thanks, everyone.
One question from a
Okay.
Social distancing, speaking of.
Yep.
The president said in the interview when he was discussing, going back to, potential talking filibuster, that the filibuster is on his mind because, quote, we're almost getting to a point where democracy is having a hard time functioning. But my colleague points out that that dynamic has been true specifically in the Senate for a very long time, years even. So was there anything specific to the current dynamic in the Senate that made President Biden sort of decide that now is a moment to change the filibuster rules?
Sure. Well, as I answered in response to the question just a few minutes ago, there are a number of ideas that members of the Senate have put forward. They range. Some are against changing the filibuster in the Democratic Party. Some are for it. Some are for going back to a talking filibuster, back to the days of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He's watching it closely. He was in the Senate for 36 years. He's happy to hear their ideas. His preference remains working with Democrats and Republicans to get business done for the American people. So it's a conversation, as you well know, that's happening on Capitol Hill right now, and he's certainly watching it as most other people are as well. Thank you, everyone.